Hello, everyone. Welcome to Market Me Social. Be social simple. Nerds on. And this is episode number 10, where we're going to be discussing somewhat of a controversial topic from time to time, influencer marketing. That's where we're here. We want to just dive into it for a minute. What's good, what's not, what should you be thinking about? Should you use it? And so on. So before we get into that, Sis, Taryn Arsenault, conversation
Hello, hello.
architect of Market Me Social. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
I'm okay. I'm okay. The pollen count here in Georgia is about 50 million. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with my sinuses or eyes or anything today. So to all of our listeners, if my eyes look a little puffy, it could be that. But other than that, it's beautiful and it's sunny, and we are having fun recording episode 10, where we are going to dive into influencer marketing and just some takeaways and things that we have seen to give everyone who's listening some context. So what is your thoughts? You don't want to kick us off, Sis, on influencer marketing and what people should be thinking about?
Well, let's just start with because I find that it's getting very, very blurred now. Influencer, affiliate marketing, influencer, affiliate marketing. So let's just
Yeah.
start for our audience for, you know, question's sake. Go through briefly what actually is considered influence marketing.
Yeah. Big question. So the idea, and it has so many different forms. On the big scale, it's like, okay, you know people, you have a social media following. Let me pay you some money so that you can talk about my product, and that will gain more views to my website, will gain more views to my product page. It will result in more purchases. So that's like the really short definition of influencer marketing. And then we can, which I know we're going to dive into some of the challenges that come with that uh, when you're out there trying to find someone who can be an influencer for your brand. That's the big challenge.
That's it. And that leads perfectly into the next question. So, if you as a company have decided that this is the type of marketing you would like to invest in, you would like to possibly pay into having some influence marketing done, build your brand that way. Um, how, what's the possibility? So let's break it down. Is it going to actually add value to a company? How do you find a qualified influencer? What's the difference between a qualified influencer and the pitfall of somebody that may be taking advantage?
So it's really up to you as a company to just make good decisions. So I'll tell you the one I've received emails, and some of my clients have received emails where you can tell that the due diligence wasn't done. They were simply, hey, I noticed you have X amount of followers. Would you be interested in talking about my blanket or my window trimmings? And it has nothing to do with the like, if they had have researched who they were asking, then they probably wouldn't have uh would not have put out that request. So it can add value when you have done your homework, when you've done your research. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you're looking for the Kardashian type influencer. We know that they're like some of the bigger names that are out there. Of course, we can look at all kinds of different celebrity type names and what they do for influencer marketing. But you don't have to think that big. Often, some of the best stories I've heard about influencer marketing is when a brand looks into their own network and just see, okay, who are our brand ambassadors? Who is using our product, and who in that sector of using that product, are they a person perhaps of influence in the community? Could they speak? And it could be someone that has 100 followers. So that's where, as a company, you have to really, really do your homework. What are your KPIs? What are your key performance indicators? What are you looking for? What are you hoping to gain out of using an influencer? What is the message? And then are you looking for them to be exclusive, or are you looking for them just to be able to be transparent and just be able to talk about the product? So I heard Jason Falls was one. I listened on a podcast a couple of months ago, and I just loved his story because he's a big bourbon guy. And he was contacted to talk about a particular bourbon brand, but he didn't put himself in a situation where he can only talk about one bourbon as an example, because he likes tasting all kinds. But he could still be an influencer because he's referencing a particular product, perhaps in his own podcast or in his own social media. So those are just some some different things that you have to think about as a company, and just have that checklist and make sure you're well informed about what an influencer could produce for your company.
That's some great advice. I really appreciate that you telling, or saying to look at your existing followers, find people that are using your products. Maybe they don't have 5,000 followers, but if they're legitimately using your product, that's going to build a bigger brand value than somebody that is just out there to sell your product, that doesn't really have a personal relationship with it. So that's some fantastic advice when it comes to choosing an affiliate marketer to work with. So that leads right back into now, so that's the positive. That's somebody that's willing to work with your company, that's going to legitimately help build your company. What's a big problem that is becoming more and more apparent, especially with like forums with Reels and TikTok, of these influencer affiliate marketers? Where are the dangers and the pitfalls in regards to that?
Well, it's the lack of authenticity can instantly come through, and then you're really, really messed up, because it makes it more difficult for you to use influencers for any other campaign. So that goes back to what we were chatting about a moment ago. You have to do your homework. If you may have like a one and done, and there's like this big hit for someone who's like blah 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 blah, and I use the blue mouse, that kind of approach to like this random piece of anything that shows up when they're on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, whatever it may be. But people aren't stupid. Like, we're smart. We know when something is authentic and when something is just it's just another billboard. That's all it is. So, but if that's what you want, if you think that's what's going to be good, you just want to kind of get your name out there, that may work for your company. However, if you want something that's sustainable, you need to really think about your campaign and how authentic it's going to be, and choose someone or people, a group of people who are going to be able to provide that level of authenticity. And then also, your PR. We've seen some crazy PR nightmares that have happened because of an influencer representing a brand, and then that influencer does or says something that, again, back into this cancel culture society that we're in. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have that person, and then you're having to pivot. And that can happen in any scenario. So there's just some different things that you really have to think through, and make sure you have definitely crossed all your T's and dotted your I's, to in case something does go wrong, like, what are you ready to do? Are you ready to make that change, move to someone else, come up with your own PR statement? All those items need to be in place with some internal communication, and just for hopefully never, but in case that does happen, where things go a little bit outery with your influencer.
Yeah, that's again some really great advice, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like, it's funny, somebody sent me a TikTok asking me a question: do you think this is a good product? And so I watched it, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this makes no sense. And so I went to the website that he was pitching, and what he had just pitched in his sales wasn't anything that the company was actually selling. It wasn't how they had structured their billables. And I'm like, this guy's telling people, oh, you can get this for $59 a whole year. You're never going to pay anything more. And then you go on the website and you're like, no, that's not actually it. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, this poor company, do they realize that this is happening? Now they're going to have all these customers coming in and said, well, this guy said, hey, I only had to pay once. Now, why am I getting a bill? It can get pretty crazy pretty fast if you're not careful. Like you said, having those checks and balances to make sure that your company is being properly represented. It absolutely has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You have to control your brand. You have to own your brand, and that way you're otherwise, yeah, that message, boy, that can get real shaky real quick. So that's a good example of misrepresentation and what that can do to your brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 30-second post, and all of a sudden you have a 3-month nightmare on your hands.
Yeah. And the other thing I was something you said, sis, that just it resonated from the standpoint of like why we're even doing this show. I mean, there's all kinds of blogs out there about influencer marketing, but it goes back to our marketing principle, which is be social simple. Why? If you're simple about things, you're also going to be very, very careful and not just be like a moth to a light. It's like, oh, there's the next shiny thing, and let me try that out. Whatever you do needs to be sustainable. So if that's the one takeaway, you're listening to this show, if that's your choice, it does work. I agree with influencer marketing, but it needs to be sustainable. It needs to be part of your overall program that is going to continue to let people know about your brand, and it needs to be authentic. That's my summary.
It's perfect. Perfect way to wrap it up. That just makes it the way it needs to be.
Cool. Yeah, great topic. Thanks for bringing that up today, sis. So this has been episode 10. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Be sure to check out our website, marketmesocial.co. Please subscribe to the channel. Sign up for our newsletter. Give us some love. We love your thumbs up and your comments and your feedback. And so we're grateful for you taking the time out of your day. It really means a lot to us that you're taking your time to watch this show or listen to it on the podcast or read it on the blog, whatever you're doing, whatever media works for you. Until next time, take care, everyone.